Hey kids, it's Grandmaster Ben Finegold again, here with Kid Chess. And got another game from Magnus Carlsen, the current world champion. He's playing, I think he's the current number 2 or 3 rated player in China, Yangyi. And this was actually in a playoff in a tournament where they tied for first. And they had a 2-game playoff in blitz chess instead of in slow chess. And Magnus won the first game, and this was the second game. And Magnus needed a draw, and he won the match. And Yangyi needed to win, and then they would tie the match and play some more chess. Okay, so they played what's called a Nimzo Indian, where white plays knight c3, and black plays bishop b4. And normally in a Nimzo Indian, I have white, but I've had black too, especially when I was your age. The bishop's pinning the knight. Now, I like to play queen c2 when I have white, but knight f3 is a very common move. Now, in the Nimzo Indian, one of black's main problems, and this happens in a lot of queen pawn openings, is this bishop on c8. It has trouble getting out. So normally what black does when the bishop can't get through these pawns is black plays b6, gets his bishop out another way. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, e3, bishop b7, bishop d3, both sides castle. Not anything special so far, sort of a normal, you get your pieces out, you castle. Okay, now black has to decide what he's going to do with these pawns. White already made a decision. White put his pawns here. So should black play d5? Should black play c5? Should he do them both? Okay, he played c5. Normally, when you want to move your knight out, if you move it to c6, you'd like to move your c pawn first, so you put some pressure on the center, and so you don't block your c pawn. Okay, now the game gets really interesting, because white made a move. I'm sure all of your chess coaches would be like, why did he do that? It's for a very specific reason, which we occasionally see in this opening. Now, this bishop was pinning the knight, and as you've noticed, it's no longer pinning the knight because the white castled. So white played a very interesting move, knight a4, putting the knight on the side of the board. And you're probably like, why did he do that? Why did he put his knight on the side of the board? Well, he wants to trap the bishop. So next move, he wants to play a3, and black can't take that knight because the knight moved away. The bishop has to go here, and eventually white would try to trap that bishop on the side of the board. Also, if I play a3 and the bishop retreats, then this pawn's not defended as much. Okay, so knight a4 is not a bad move. Okay, Magnus played c takes d4. He wants his bishop to have some retreating squares so it doesn't get trapped. This is actually an important lesson from this video. If you move your pieces out to good squares, good aggressive squares, active, occasionally they get attacked and you have to retreat them. So you always have to look out to see if your pieces can retreat if they get attacked. And that's why Magnus took on d4. Now his bishop's no longer trapped and can move back this way. Okay, and white took back with the pawn, which opens up this line for his bishop. Now Magnus made a really interesting move. He doesn't really want to retreat to any of these squares. I mean, this square just loses the bishop. This square blocks the pawn. This square is not that bad. But Magnus played rook e8. So his bishop could retreat all the way back, and then his rook would be controlling the center. And after the move a3, he did indeed retreat all the way back. And Yangyi developed his last piece with bishop f4. Okay, now we get another really interesting strategical idea. It's a pretty advanced video for you guys. Knight a4, the idea was to trap the bishop, and Magnus escaped. And now Magnus had his own unusual idea. Normally, I would say that's the greatest bishop ever. It's a Finegold bishop on this nice long diagonal. But Magnus had other ideas. Magnus is thinking, if I attack this pawn, that knight's the only thing defending it. If I could get rid of that knight, then I could try to win the pawn. So Magnus took that knight, a very unusual choice. And after queen takes, he played knight c6, attacking the pawn. Obviously, if the white knight was on f3, the knight would be defending the pawn. And Pawn's not so easy to defend. This knight can't defend it. The rooks can't defend it. The bishop can't defend it. White doesn't really want to retreat his bishop. He could, but that's a nice square for the bishop, and the bishop here would be blocking the open file, and it would be defending a pawn. So white made a pretty reasonable move, I think. Played the move d5, okay, attacking the knight. And they traded pawns, okay? And it looks like sort of a boring position where white has two bishops, which grandmasters like, but this knight on a4 is not very good. And I've made videos before, some of which you've probably seen, where I talk about loose pieces. And sometimes when grandmasters blunder and lose, and you're wondering, how could they do such a thing? Those guys are the best players in the world. Grandmasters make mistakes too, and the rules apply to them too. Sometimes they just don't know it. So in this position, Magnus played knight to e5, forking the queen and bishop. It's not a dangerous fork because the bishop's defended, I can take the knight, etc. Now here, Yangyi made a terrible blunder, losing the game. And what's funny is, this game hasn't been super tactical or super complicated. It's sort of positional in nature. You get your minor pieces out, you castle, and you trade some pawns, you trade some pieces, and nobody really has an advantage. The computer thinks this is about equal. And here, made a terrible blunder, okay? It has to do with loose pieces. And I could have used this game in a loose piece lecture pretty easily. Yangyi's probably about 20th best in the world. So this kind of blunder would only happen to him if he was playing a blitz game and he was playing really quickly. If he was playing a slow game and the game took several hours, he would never make such a blunder. But in blitz chess, we all blunder. So white has a choice. White can give up his bishop for the knight, or he can give up this bishop for the knight. And he made the wrong choice. If he takes this and black takes back, the game's about equal. I don't think anybody has an advantage here. Not too exciting. Probably Magnus would like that because Magnus needed a draw to win the match. Okay, instead, Yangyi made a terrible blunder. He saved his queen, at the same time defending his bishop, which is attacked, with the move queen to d1. Saving his bishop, saving his queen. And that move loses a piece. Sort of a medium, I think, complex tactic, one that a grandmaster shouldn't fall for, okay? And I'll give you a hint, and then you can pause the video if you want and try to solve it. When the queen was on f3, it was defending the bishop, and now it's not. And also, this knight was never protected, but now it is protected. So the queen's defending the bishop, the queen's defending the knight. That's sort of an overworked, and nothing's defending this. Conversely, black's pieces are not under attack. Okay, the only piece under attack is the knight on e5, and that's defended. So this could be really risky. Black's pieces are defended really well, white's pieces are not. Can you find the forced win that Magnus played here, winning a piece and winning the match? So pause the video and try to find it. Okay, so one thing that you've been taught by your coaches, by me, by your next door neighbor, by probably some guy on the moon, was look for forcing variations, checks and captures. This is the only check, but that's terrible, okay? And there's a few captures. There's this terrible capture, and then there's the reasonable captures, taking this and taking this. You always look for the biggest captures first, taking a queen, taking a rook, okay? So the biggest capture is knight takes d3, okay? White has to capture back. And now this is where you really get into the loose pieces drop off. Bishop on f4 is loose, knight on a4 is loose. Uh-oh. And as you can see, they're lined up on the same rank. Uh-oh. So hopefully you know the answer now. Rook to e4, attacking two pieces. And even though white's one of the best players in the world, on move 16, he's already losing. He's already losing a piece for nothing. So all these pieces that Magnus has are very safe because they're defended. And the piece that's really far away, this rook on e4, is also defended. Conversely, none of Yangyi's pieces that he moved out are defended. None of them. Terrible. So if all your pieces are not defended and your opponent finds a way to attack 2 or 3 of them, you're going to lose one. And that's what happened here. And now Yangyi just gave up because he needs to win this game to tie the match. And he's not going to win this game. He's going to lose a piece against the world champion. It's all over. So a terrible game from Yangyi, but a good lesson for you. When I was a kid, the way I learned to play better chess was I lost and I lost and I lost. And then I was like, why do I keep losing? And eventually I figured it out. And nowadays, you can look in chess books and chess magazines, and even better, on the internet and videos, and watch other people lose, and then go, oh, that's interesting. I won't do that. So hopefully the lesson is, when you have a winning fork, obviously you should play like Magnus. But when you have a losing position, because your pieces aren't defended, you should avoid that. When you move your pieces out, make sure they're protected, like Magnus's pieces are. That's why he's the world champion. This is Grandmaster Ben Finegold for Kid Chess. I hope you enjoyed that as much as Magnus did. Bye, kids.